Though the lightstick is often well invested since it's part of a group's spirit, there are still times where the management company would just throw a random idea and bring to the table some really confusing designs. While calling these lightsticks ugly or failures of creation might be a bit too extreme, since the aesthetics of each person are different, as the group and fans themselves have whined multiple times about their lightstick, such design is obviously nowhere near to the general aesthetic standard of people. Number 1. Sexkeys. After roughly 20 years working in the industry, Sexkeys finally had for themselves a lightstick in 2017. However, in contrast to the expectation of fans, the design was oddly plain. Though the lightstick came in 2 different versions instead of 1 as usual, it could have been better off had Sexkeys put all effort into creating one best version of the lightstick. As you can see, while there are obviously no questionable or ugly factors in the design, it is the fact that everything is just so plain and normal that has made the lightstick appear on the list. While most groups usually bring the most brilliant, outstanding lightstick to the table, that of Sexkeys looks as if it was designed by an amateur designer, whose pool of ideas was as dry as a desert. When buying Sexkeys' lightstick, fans have to assemble it themselves instead of having a complete, inseparable one like other groups is. Specifically, the set will include 3 parts: a black stick, which is basically a flashlight, the first version, aka a small silicone yellow balloon with Sexkeys' logo on top, and the second version, which is the upgraded plastic design of the yellow balloon with the transparent bigger balloon outside. In fact, it's not so correct to compare the lightstick to a balloon because it actually looks more like the Korean pita bread, without sesame seeds on top. For this high similarity and the fact that Sexkeys didn't call their lightstick by any special name, DSFs have long referred to it by Gongal Bong, the pita bread lightstick. Despite the lame design, Gongal Bong has quite an interesting history. According to the groups, since they used to perform in the era where there was no such concept as a lightstick, and thus their fans would use yellow balloons to stir up the atmosphere, they released the balloon version of the lightstick as a way to appreciate DSFs and keep that moment alive forever. Number 2. btob's Lightstick version 1. In total contrast to Sexkeys, btob seem to have gone a bit out of this world with their lightstick design. Instead of the common formula where a stick plus a lightable ball will be equal to a lightstick, the group turned their lightstick into a toy version of a trumpet. However, because of the oversimplification of the design, btob's lightstick looked like nothing but a cheesy blue flared mouth vase. If you leave the lightstick in the kitchen, maybe your mom will indeed arrange some flowers in it. Another element that made btob's lightstick appear on this list is its functionality. Since an ordinary lightstick will have an actual stick that can be held and whisked around in a concert, with this trumpet-shaped design, where would you hold it? At the mouthpiece or the simplified main slide? Either way, you will still look awkward when vibing with the song and whisking it in the air. Number 3. B1A4. Another attempt to stand out that ended up looking cheesy and weird was the lightstick of B1A4. Despite being a popular group of Gen 2, not until 3 years ago did B1A4 have for themselves an official lightstick, Byonggi. While some fans did take pride in this one-of-a-kind design, most people believed it was too boring, cheap, and useless in representing the unique color of B1A4. Instead of the regular round ball, the group replaced it with the green zombie's head. While that could have gone well with some spooky and scary details, the group opted for the heart-shaped cute red eyes with a bow below the head. However, there is one thing that you can never do with other lightsticks, but absolutely can do with Byonggi. Either bringing it along with you when you do trick-or-treats, or using it as a Halloween decoration for your house. For example, besides placing just pumpkins in the yard, you can also plant some Byonggi into the ground like this. Number 4. Sistar. Despite being one of the top girl groups of Gen 2 and even owning the title of Summer Queen, Sistar has never had a proper lightstick until the day they split ways. Instead of releasing a well-designed lightstick, Sistar introduced a piece of plastic with a big pink S, a random yellow star that a toddler could also draw, and the name of Sistar's fandom, Star 1. While other groups treat their lightstick like a unique symbol that can well represent themselves and their creativity, that of Sistar was obviously plain and boring. Where's the signature summer vibe of the girls? Where are the fresh, confident, and sexy feelings that are always there in Sistar's songs? Obviously, none of those were portrayed in the lightstick. And thus, fans have a solid reason to be triggered. However, if you want to prove yourself an authentic Star 1 and look fabulous while fanning yourself waiting for Sistar at the airports, you could totally buy this lightstick and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Number 5. Wonder Girls. While most of the mentioned groups would have their lightstick fall somewhere on the plain and simple end of the spectrum, that of Wonder Girls comes straight onto the eye-confusing extreme. However, that sophisticated detail seemingly didn't come from the efforts of being unique or anything. Rather, it's like a last-minute attempt to turn a poor amateur idea into something more complicated. By that, it means the idea of putting together the first initial letters of Wonder Girls was obviously too lame and boring. So the designer tried to cover it by making the surface resemble the pavilion part of the diamond. While it's true that the lightstick looked not that disastrous, when the light is on, it turns into a literal mess where no one could identify what is what. Since the LED system installed inside the lightstick was of poor quality, except for the areas where the lights are located, all other parts of the letters were completely left in darkness. This detail not only makes the lightstick 10 times less pretty, but also causes irritation for the eyes. Just imagine looking at a beautiful picture but with tons of black ink spots all over the place. Quite annoying, right? Number 6. NCT's Moom Wonbong. While there are quite some things to judge the lightstick of NCT, let's just sum it up with a comment of an NCTzen. According to this person, in contests where lightsticks are ranked based on their aesthetics, while fans of most groups would come to see how high their lightstick could climb, NCTzens would just come to see how low the rank of their lightstick is. Is it that bad? Some of you may ask. With NCT and the fans themselves, the answer is yes. Instead of giving the group something as special and unique as the concept of neoculture technology, the lightstick was just a cube with the plastic letters of NCT attached on 4 facets. The design is so plain and lame that even the members themselves were triggered when holding it for the first time. From the mild level reaction like the confusion of Jaemin and the shock of Jeno, it quickly elevated into the detestation of Taehyung, and the low-key judging of Mark, Jaehyung, and Lucas. Even funnier, fans believe that such a design will be more suitable as a new version of Thor's hammer rather than the lightstick of a K-pop group. However, it's worth noting that the meaning behind this chunky design is quite profound. According to SM Entertainment, since the name of NCT's fandom is NCTzens, the company introduced the lightstick in the shape of a building, so that when fans together raise Moom Wonbong in the concert, a modern city will be created. For short, SM Entertainment wanted to build a happy city for the NCTzens to live. Still, such a moving story couldn't save the fact that many people, including NCT and the fans themselves, find Moom Wonbong a huge disappointment. Number 7. Red Velvet's Kim Bong. Talking about Red Velvet, netizens often think about either their mysterious or youthful image of the girls. Sadly, their lightstick, Kim Bong, illustrated none of these two signature aspects. For some reason, both the design and the name were inspired by 2 famous dishes of South Korea, kimchi and mandu. Since SM Entertainment took literally ages to release the lightstick for Red Velvet, fans have had really high hopes for it. Of course, their dream about a magnificent lightstick was shattered into pieces, since Kim Bong was indeed a transparent dumpling whose filling is a julienne of kimchi. When the official lightstick was first seen, not only domestic but international fans were also shook to the root. One fan took her disappointment to Twitter and implied that she could hardly brag about the lightstick to anyone, because the design was just odd and awkward. Another one emphasizes that even though she was a huge Red Velvet, there would be no way that she could get into the Kim Bong. Fans also threw hands at SM for never dedicating efforts to making a proper lightstick for their idols, including SNSD, EXO, and NCT. Number 8. Golden Child's Runbong. However, if there was a contest of the weirdest lightstick of K-pop, and Kim Bong was put beside the Runbong of Golden Child, it would certainly raise the white flag. Without the need to describe, you can obviously see that Runbong is indeed a bowling pin. The only thing that separates this from the actual pin is that the group's name, Golden Child, is printed on the surface and it can be lit up with different colors. Besides the design problem that once gave fans a panic attack, people were also disappointed at the brightness of the color. Since the shell of Runbong was opaque and the light bulb itself isn't bright enough, there are very high chances that, sometime in the future concert of Golden Child, the internet would mistake Goldenesses for giving their idol a black ocean. Though that has never happened with Golden Child, their fans were once accused of participating in a black ocean for other groups just because their lightstick's brightness was extremely weak. On the date the lightstick was released, fans were blown away by its questionable design. On Panatic, there was even a whole post dedicated to dissing the lightstick, and as you can expect, the comment section was full of people sharing the same opinion. Even today, some Goldenesses still seem to have not escaped the acceptance stage to send some love to Runbong. Despite the odd design, the meaning behind this lightstick's name is quite interesting. According to the group, since the first character in Korea of Golden Child, Gul, is also goal in English, they came up with the idea of turning their lightstick into a bowling pin, aka the goal that everyone must hit when playing bowling. However, since fans need to hold the lightstick upside down when cheering for the group, The word gul becomes run, and thus Runbong was born. Number 9. Sonamu. The last lightstick that is honored to have its name on the list is that of Sonamu. Instead of taking the inspiration from something profound and meaningful like Runbong, the lightstick of Sonamu can't be any simpler, since it's literally the visual representation of the group's name. Simply put, Sonamu means pine tree in English. The group released a light table piece of plastic in the shape of a pine tree. Compared to the lightstick of Sistar, whose design was at least cut into the shape of the letter S, that of Sonamu was obviously a triangular plastic piece. However, it was not that useless since you can actually use it as a bookmark, and even use the light to read books in the dark. By that, you can not only save the electricity bills, but also can avoid the situation where your mom will catch you reading some comic books through the night. A multifunctional plastic piece that is quite worth the 15,000 Korean won price, right? Despite such brilliant functions, when Sonamu first released the lightstick, aka the lightable bookmark, fans not only whined about the cheap design, but also the choice of pearl sapphire green. Since the color was first picked by SHINee, Shawool started to throw hands at both the girls and TS Entertainment for plagiarism. Of all these questionably unique lightsticks, which one do you think is the most memeable? Comment down below to share your thoughts with us.